73-year-old man sat alone one evening doing something he'd done countless times before. Something harmless, even soothing, but this time it ended differently. That night, he didn't just lose control of his body, he lost a part of himself that would never return. And here's the shocking truth. It wasn't because he masturbated, it was because of how he did it and what he didn't know. Yes, at an older age, masturbation can quietly undermine the very health you're trying to protect, unless you understand the truths I'm about to share. I'm Dr. James, a men's health expert with over 30 years of experience helping seniors navigate the most delicate phases of their lives. I've worked with thousands of men over 60, and I've seen firsthand what happens when they're left in the dark about their own sexual health. I'm not just speaking as a doctor. I'm speaking as a man who's watched his own generation suffer in silence, quietly wondering, is this still normal? Am I doing something wrong? Here's the truth. Most older men have been masturbating the same way since they were in their 20s, but the body, the brain, and the heart don't function the same way after 60. What once felt like relief can now slowly drain your energy, your vitality, even your confidence. So why is no one talking about this? Why do so many men carry these lifelong habits, never realizing they're silently paying a price they never agreed to? In this video, I'm going to reveal 5 masturbation truths every older man deserves to know. Insights that can protect your prostate, improve your circulation, and help you stay sexually active, fulfilled, and safe well into your 70s and beyond. These aren't warnings meant to frighten you, they're lessons that restore your control. Because knowledge is power, and it's never too late to reclaim it. And stay with me until the end, because the final secret may be the one that truly changes how long you remain healthy, independent, and sexually capable. You won't hear this from most doctors, but once you do, you'll wish someone had told you sooner. Let's begin. Before we dive into these 5 critical truths, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss another honest, science-based conversation about your health, your intimacy, and your independence after 60. And if this topic matters to you, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're with me. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me focus on what truly matters to you. Now that we've broken the silence and set the tone, let's dive into the 5 masturbation secrets so many older men wish they had learned earlier, truths that could have preserved their health, their confidence, and reshaped how they aged. Secret 1. Your erection is no longer the whole story, and that's okay. There's a moment in every older man's life when he realizes his body no longer responds the way it used to. Blood flow slows, sensation shifts. What once came naturally now takes patience, intention, and sometimes frustration. For many, this moment sparks a quiet panic. An inner voice whispers, "Something must be wrong with me." But here's the secret no one ever told us. Your erection isn't the whole story anymore, and that's perfectly okay. We grew up tying sexual success to performance. Hardness meant health. Stamina meant strength. If you couldn't perform on command, something was broken. But those beliefs were planted in our youth, fueled by movies, magazines, and myths about masculinity. As we aged, no one updated the script. No one said, "Hey, your body's changing, but that doesn't mean your manhood is gone." I've sat with patients in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, men with tears in their eyes, convinced that losing a full erection meant losing their identity. But what they don't realize is this: the body is simply shifting into a new phase, one that moves from rigidity to connection, from performance to presence. They still crave intimacy, still long for closeness, but feel lost because no one explained that orgasm and erection are not the same. Yes, you heard that right. You can still experience powerful, fulfilling release, even without a full erection. Orgasmic function operates on a separate pathway. And yet most older men are never taught this. They interpret these natural changes as personal failures, not as a new evolution. Why is this such a hidden truth? As society avoids talking about older men's sexuality, we discuss pills and fixes, but not the deeper understanding. Doctors stay silent, families avoid the topic, and most men are too ashamed to speak of it, even to their closest friends. The result? Generations of men carrying guilt, confusion, and shame about something entirely natural. Let me tell you about Charles, a 72-year-old patient who came to me embarrassed, defeated, ready to give up on sex entirely. He told me, "Doc, it's like the lights are on, but nobody's home." We talked, we unpacked years of silent assumptions. I told him that pleasure doesn't vanish, it transforms. With a little patience and kindness toward himself, he could still experience fulfillment, just in a different form. 2 months later, he told me he was feeling something he hadn't felt in years: hope. That's why this first truth is so important. When you let go of the pressure to perform and start exploring what actually brings pleasure, you unlock an entirely new experience. Touch becomes intentional, time becomes your ally, and intimacy, whether with yourself or a partner, feels rich again, not measured by hardness, but by presence. Older men need to hear this, not just from doctors, but from one another. You're not broken, you're evolving. And this shift isn't a loss, it's an invitation. A chance to rediscover your body in ways you never had time for before. But why isn't this knowledge more common? Why aren't we taught that sexual identity is deeper than anatomy? Because we live in a culture obsessed with youth and silent about aging, especially male sexuality. But that silence is costing us far more than we think. It's time to break, for ourselves and those who come after us. So if you've been feeling like something's off, I want you to know it's not just you, and it's not too late. Your story doesn't end with age. It begins again with understanding. The erection may no longer be the main character, but what comes next can be even more powerful. And speaking of powerful, what if I told you that masturbation after 60 isn't just about sex? It's about emotion, stress, and mental well-being. In the next section, I'll reveal a truth most men never hear. The emotional reason why so many seniors turn to self-pleasure, and how ignoring it might be quietly draining your strength day by day. Stay with me. This one may surprise you. Secret 2, masturbation isn't just sexual, it's emotional and neurological. Most men think of masturbation as purely physical, a moment of release, a simple instinctive act. But after decades of working with older men, I've learned something far deeper and far more crucial. Masturbation, especially in your 60s, 70s, and beyond, is not just sexual. It's emotional, it's neurological, it's psychological. And the reason so few men understand this is simple. No one ever told us. No one ever imagined we'd still seek pleasure, let alone still need it to feel whole. I recall a patient named Howard, a retired veteran in his late 70s. He didn't come to me with physical problems. He came because he felt emotionally flat, numb, disconnected, like he was just coasting through life. As we talked, it became clear that masturbation wasn't about lust for him. It was about peace. It helped him sleep. It calmed his nerves. In his words, it was his reset button. Yet he'd never made that connection. He thought it was just a leftover habit from youth, never realizing that this private act was serving a vital role in his emotional regulation. And he's not alone. Scientific studies now show that many men over 60 use masturbation to manage stress, loneliness, grief, even fear. It's not just about desire. It's about grounding yourself. It's about reclaiming a sense of calm when the world feels uncertain. But here's where it gets complicated. Most of us were never taught to examine our emotional lives, let alone how they relate to our sexual patterns. We were raised to tough it out, to suppress, to power through. So when we find ourselves turning to self-text, not out of passion but from sadness or restlessness, we often don't understand why. And without that awareness, we risk turning something that could be healing into something hollow or harmful. That's why this truth matters. Masturbation in older age often becomes a tool for emotional survival. And when approached with mindfulness, it can be a source of wellness, even healing. But when it's done absent-mindedly, it begins to wear you down. Not because the act is inherently harmful, but because your presence is missing. You're numbing instead of engaging, and gradually, without a sound, that disconnect can strip the joy and energy right out of your life. We also need to look at brain chemistry. After orgasm, the brain releases potent neurochemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. Each one impacts your mood, sleep, drive, and even memory. That release can be a blessing for older adults battling depression or insomnia, but once again, it only works if you're fully aware of your actions and intentions. Too often, older men fall into a loop of repetition, the same habits, the same thoughts, the same patterns, and the brain begins to dull. It stops responding with vitality because it's no longer being challenged or meaningfully engaged. That's why a shift in perspective is essential. Don't think of masturbation as a routine behavior. Think of it as a conscious ritual. Ask yourself, am I doing this to connect with myself? Or am I running from something I'd rather not feel? Am I choosing this moment with intention or simply filling an emptiness? The truth is, no one taught us to reflect this deeply because men's emotional lives have long been dismissed, especially as we grow older. Society assumes we stop feeling, that we become cold stones, untouched and uninterested. But that's never been the case. In truth, we feel more now than we did in our youth. We've just mastered the art of hiding it. And sometimes the only place it surfaces is when we're alone. So let this be a call to bring that awareness into the open, to honor the emotional and neurological dimensions of your sexuality, to stop pretending that touch is only physical, because it isn't. It's memory, it's feeling, it's life itself. And when used with wisdom, it can be deeply restorative. Now, here's the part most men never realize, especially those who've been sexually dormant for a long time. While self-pleasure can soothe the soul, it also protects the body. In the next section, I'll reveal a secret that could preserve your sexual vitality for years to come. The quiet truth behind use it or lose it, and what really happens when male sexual activity stops after 60. You won't want to miss what comes next. Secret 3. The use it or lose it rule is real, but often misunderstood. There's a hard reality most aging men don't learn until it's already too late. When it comes to your sexual function, if you stop using it, you truly can lose it. But what rarely gets explained is how that happens, or how deeply it impacts not just your sexuality, but your identity. This isn't about fear, it's about understanding the subtle changes that unfold within your body over time. It's why so many good men end up asking, why isn't anything working anymore? When the answer has been quietly hiding in the background for years. As we age, our blood vessels gradually narrow, nerve endings become less responsive, and the penile tissues begin to lose elasticity. These aren't random issues. They're biological responses to one thing: lack of use. Just like a muscle wastes away when it isn't exercised, your sexual system begins to deteriorate if it's not engaged. And here's the heartbreaking part. Most older men have no idea this decline is happening until it's already advanced. I've witnessed it countless times in my work. A man in his late 60s or 70s finds a new partner after years of solitude. Maybe he's a widower, maybe divorced, maybe he just gave up on intimacy. And when he finally feels desire return, he discovers his body no longer responds. It's not just slower, it's different, numb, detached, even painful. And tragically, he assumes something is broken within him, when in reality, it's simply the natural result of long-term disuse. Why aren't men told this sooner? Why is this basic truth excluded from nearly every conversation on aging? Because post-60 sexual health is still treated as optional, as though pleasure, function, and connection stop mattering once the gray hairs come. It's a damaging myth, and it robs countless men of something they could have kept alive with just a little consistent care. Let me tell you about Roy. He was 74 when he came to see me. He hadn't shared intimacy in over a decade, not for lack of desire, but because life had worn him down. His wife had passed, he'd adjusted to loneliness, and slowly he stopped touching himself at all. Then he met someone new. He was elated, until his body failed to respond. He tried pills, creams, gadgets, none delivered what he hoped for. I explained gently that what he was facing wasn't dysfunction, it was disuse. His internal structure had atrophied, his blood flow had declined, his nerve response had dulled. No one had told him this could happen. But here's the hopeful part. With time, gentle stimulation, and steady practice, even alone, he began to feel a shift. It wasn't a miracle, and it wasn't instant, but it was real. His body started to remember. His confidence returned, and so did his sense of aliveness. This is why masturbation, particularly in later life, isn't just about pleasure, it's about preservation. It keeps blood circulating to vital tissues. It tells your body, this still matters, and the body listens. You're not just maintaining function, you're holding on to yourself in a profoundly emotional, life-affirming way. Too many men believe that without a partner, their sexual well-being no longer counts. But that's the biggest misconception of all. You don't need a partner to stay sexually alive. You just need presence, curiosity, and consistency. Because the truth is, the simple act of regular attention might one day allow you to return to intimacy fully present, fully capable, because you never let that part of you fade away. Don't wait for a future relationship to rediscover your body. Keep that inner connection alive, because the moment you let it go, the body begins to forget, and the longer it forgets, the harder it becomes to remember. And there's one more hidden threat I've seen over and over. One most men don't recognize until it's already drained their desire, their energy, and even their capacity for real connection. In the next section, we'll explore something nearly every man has turned to, especially during loneliness, but that may be quietly rewiring the brain in deeply harmful ways. This next secret might be the one quietly costing you more than you know. Stay with me. Secret 4. Porn may be eroding your sexual instincts without your awareness. When you're alone, especially in older age, it's easy to fall into routines that feel soothing. Late at night, the house is still. You reach for what's familiar, your phone, your tablet, your laptop. A few clicks and you're watching something promising fast satisfaction. You don't think twice, it's automatic. And in the moment, it works. But over time, something unsettling begins to surface. Your arousal fades faster, the climax feels less fulfilling, your interest in real intimacy starts to dissolve. You don't feel broken, but you sense something's wrong. This is the hidden cost of a habit left unchecked for too long. Porn in your later years may be silently dismantling your natural sexual response, and most men have no clue it's happening. This isn't about shame, it's about neuroscience. I've seen it time and again. Men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond puzzled by why their bodies no longer respond to touch, why their attraction to real women has gone numb. They blame aging, hormones, stress. But often, the deeper reason is overstimulation from years, sometimes decades, of porn use. And unlike in youth, the impact now runs far deeper. Your brain has what's called a reward system. It tells you what to desire, what to seek, what feels good. When you consume high-intensity porn, especially alone, your brain gets flooded with dopamine, the pleasure signal. At first, it's exhilarating, but like any drug, the brain adapts. It begins to crave more novelty, more stimulation, more shock. What once aroused you barely registers now. Your threshold rises. And as that threshold rises, your ability to connect with real human intimacy drops. What makes this especially dangerous in older age is that the brain is no longer as adaptable. Its plasticity, the capacity to rewire and reset, declines. So if porn has been your main source of stimulation for years, your neural wiring becomes fixed. And eventually it stops reacting to natural triggers like memory, imagination, or loving physical closeness. This is what I call arousal fatigue, and it's extremely common among aging men. The worst part? Most don't see it coming. They think they've lost their desire due to age, stress, or medication. They don't realize their brain has been retrained, accustomed only to extreme artificial imagery, and now it no longer responds to what's real. I once worked with a man named Ernest, 68, widowed, retired. Each night he watched porn, not out of desire but to feel some trace of closeness with another human being. Initially, it brought him a sense of comfort, but after a year he noticed something unsettling. He couldn't connect with others emotionally or physically. It was as if he had built a barrier between himself and the world. He felt numb, isolated, and increasingly frustrated. Together, we worked to gently untangle him from that dependency. It wasn't easy, but over the months, he began to reawaken to his body, not through screens, but through breath, memory, and touch. His senses returned. He stopped existing like a man trapped in yesterday and started living fully in the now. And here lies a truth that breaks me. Most older men don't even realize this is happening. No one warns them. No one discusses how porn impacts the aging brain. Instead, they slowly disconnect from natural pleasure, assuming it's just a part of aging. But it doesn't have to be. You can retrain your brain. You can reset your internal wiring. It begins by stepping away from the screen, even briefly. Let your body reawaken to its own rich sensations. Breathe. Slow down. Touch with presence, not performance. You may be amazed by what's still alive inside you, quietly waiting to emerge. And when you break that cycle, something incredible stirs. Your imagination returns, your sensitivity deepens, your longing for authentic connection with yourself or someone else starts to bloom again. This isn't about giving up sexuality, it's about reclaiming it from what's been silently draining it away. But there's one more truth you need to hear, one that ties it all together. Because masturbation, practiced with presence, isn't something shameful. In fact, it may be the very practice that supports your vitality, your emotional balance, even your longevity. In the next and final truth, I'll explain why the act so misunderstood might be your most powerful ally in aging with strength. Stay with me, you'll want to hear what comes next. Secret 5. Few doctors mention it, but masturbation can be a lifeline. In all my years working with men over 60, there's one thing I hear that always hits hard. I didn't know it was still okay to do that at my age. They say it softly, often looking down, their voices edged with quiet shame, as if they'd been caught doing something wrong, even harmful. But the reality couldn't be more different. Masturbation, especially for older men, isn't just acceptable. It's often one of the healthiest things you can do, not just for sexual release, but for mental balance, physical wellness, and personal dignity. Sadly, most older men never hear this. And here's why. Most doctors simply won't bring it up. Why? Because we're trained to focus on illness, not wholeness. We're taught to discuss symptoms, drugs, surgeries, not pleasure, connection, or identity, especially not private rituals that quietly keep a man rooted. That conversation rarely enters the exam room, and so millions of men are left in the dark, unsure if their natural urges are shameful or unsafe. That silence becomes the real threat. Let's set the record straight. Masturbation, when approached with awareness and care, offers measurable benefits for aging men. It boosts circulation in the pelvic area, promoting healthy tissue. It helps the prostate clear out old fluid. It improves sleep through calming brain chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin. It uplifts mood and eases loneliness, something far too common in older men. But the effects go deeper than biology. It's also about self-worth. When a man loses touch with his sexuality later in life, he often loses touch with himself. He begins to feel invisible, not just to others, but to his own sense of being. He stops believing he still deserves pleasure, still has desire, still matters on a deeply human level. And his world begins to shrink. He becomes not just older, but emotionally diminished. I've seen it too often. One man I worked with, Walter, hadn't touched himself in 6 years. After his wife died, he told himself that chapter was closed, that seeking pleasure alone was wrong, maybe even harmful. But over time, his spirit dimmed, his sleep faltered, he grew easily agitated. Only when we had an honest talk did he begin to see that sexual touch plays a vital role in emotional wellness. I still remember his words, "I didn't know I was allowed to still be a man." That has never left me. Far too many older men carry the belief that sex, especially solo sex, is for the young, that past a certain age it's shameful, childish, or unneeded. But that belief wounds deeply, because the need for touch, for release, for intimacy, those needs don't vanish with age. They transform. And if we meet those changes with curiosity and grace, we don't lose who we are, we rediscover ourselves in richer, more meaningful ways. So, why don't doctors tell you this? Because many don't know how. Because they weren't trained to discuss sexuality and aging with honesty or care. Because they're afraid to open a door they don't know how to walk through. And because they wrongly assume you don't want to talk about it either. But you're not alone. Thousands of older men carry the same doubts, ask the same questions, feel the same quiet shame. And I'm here to tell you, it's not too late. You're still allowed to feel. You're still allowed to want. You're still allowed to touch your body with tenderness and respect. Masturbation isn't proof of disconnection. It can be a profound form of reconnection, a bridge between body and soul. A quiet way of saying to yourself, I still matter. So if you've been holding silent doubts, wondering if your habits are strange or wrong or unsafe, I ask you to let those fears go. What you do privately with care and presence is not only healthy, it's healing. And in a world that often forgets men like you, it may be your greatest act of self-respect. Because in truth, masturbation was never the problem. Silence was. And once you break that silence, you begin reclaiming parts of yourself that were never gone, only waiting to be remembered. You've made it through all 5 secrets. But I have one last thing I want to leave you with. One final truth that weaves it all together. Stay with me for the conclusion. It could change how you see yourself and aging forever. Conclusion: 5 masturbation truths older men wish they'd known sooner. If you've come this far, let me say this with sincerity: thank you. Thank you for staying open, for staying curious, for facing a topic most men your age were never invited to discuss. That alone places you in rare company. Men who refuse to give up, who won't go silent, who won't let shame dictate the final chapters of their lives. We began by challenging a hidden belief many men carry, that aging means fading desire, that self-thought becomes inappropriate past a certain point. But what we've uncovered together is something much more honest and empowering. First, we revealed that while erections may shift, pleasure doesn't have to vanish. Your body is not breaking, it's adapting. Then we explored the emotions beneath self-talk, loneliness, anxiety, the longing for comfort, that it's not merely physical, it's deeply emotional and neurological. Next, we saw what happens when you stop using your sexual function. It's not just age, it's disuse that causes the most damage. Then we discussed how porn, when overused, can rewire your brain and dull your connection to natural arousal. A silent struggle many face without understanding why. And finally, we shared the truth few doctors ever say, that masturbation in later life can be a lifeline, not just for the body, but for confidence, identity, and emotional health. These 5 truths aren't mere tips, they are invitations. Invitations to return to your body with respect, to release judgment, to stop waiting for permission to feel. You don't need to be in a relationship. You don't need to match your younger self. All you need is the willingness to listen to the subtle signals still whispering from within. I'm not speaking as a doctor now. I'm speaking as a man who's walked this path with hundreds of others. Men who feared they were broken only to learn they were simply uninformed. Men who believed it was too late only to discover the truth just in time. You're not too old. You're not out of time. You are not finished. Connection, pleasure, and healing remain available if you'll reach for them. So whatever your age, whatever your history, may you walk away with this one truth. Your body may grow older, but your right to feel, to touch, and to be whole never expires.